welcome to this video, round 5 of the candidates tournament. This is about the game Svidler against Topalov. To quickly describe the situation of both players, let's start with Topalov because it's easier to describe. He has played 4 draws and he really didn't get anywhere near victory in those games. He was more or less equal all the time, or maybe slightly worse in his first round game against Möller, for instance. And Svidler has really had a great up and down tournament. I mean, not great in his view, but great to watch because it was so much action. He won a really nice game against Andreikin, drew against Kramnik from a 1 position. Kramnik found a miracle defense, and then he lost against Aronian after rejecting an early possibility to basically draw the game outright and fighting and then going down. So he could have been in a fantastic situation, being on +2, but he's just on 50%. So they both are on 50% and really would like to win a game. I'm sure about that, to get back into the race. So let's see what happened. Svidler playing e4, and Topalov is playing the double king pawn, e4, e5, the Rui, and what line? Aha. So Topalov is playing something that is always difficult to name. I think this is normally called the Möller variation, named after a Danish player. Yeah, it's one of those interesting systems where black is putting a bishop on c5. This is very much related to this system, which has many names: the Tkachiev variation, the Shirov variation, the Neo-Arkhangelsk variation. It's related. The thing is, with bishop c5, black avoids a certain line. If you look at this, black avoids the line 7a4, because after bishop c5, if white now plays, let's say, c3, b5, bishop b3, we come to a position that could have been reached in the other move order as well, but white has forfeited this a4 idea. However, there is a difference, of course. After b5 now, white can also put the bishop on c2 immediately, which is what Svidler did. And this makes some sense, of course. It covers the e4 pawn, and white intends a quick d4. Yeah, Topalov now played very actively, played d5. This is the known move, and very ambitious move. But it's one of those moves, if white is playing timidly, black will instantly get a good game. Let's say if white is not doing something drastic like d3, black is just completely fine here. This is, in fact, almost always the case if black gets to play d5 in double king pawn openings without being punished with something concrete. Then d5 is normally good. Let's for instance take the Marshall Gambit. There the punishment is the loss of a pawn, but you see that even there black has got a very good counterplay. Yeah, well, something like d3 is just not doing something. Svidler played d4, and this is the most critical move in the position, instantly leading to complications. I don't want to go too deep into the further opening stage. Black took on e4 and white took on e5. So interesting early tactics. Here black has a choice. Can also take on f3. This is for instance been played in a game that Peter Svidler played 5 years ago. This went like that, against former women world champion Antonetta Stefanova in Gibraltar. And he, after those moves, he retained he got a very good attack going. It seems that Topalov's move is just better. He took on d1, rook takes, and now captures the knight. yeah, white takes on f6, needs to get the piece back, of course. And yeah, one thing to quickly show is that in fact this had been played in a game. Topalov, Shirov, and Shirov took on f2. Crazy tactic.
Check.
The idea is to get
Check.
this in and then take the knight. I don't want to describe it in detail. I was just trying to show that both players have some experience with this position, from the white side, from the black side. So it's not like they're on unknown territory. And we see that the moves here up to now have been played quite quickly. Okay, now Topalov took on f3. And white needs to capture on f6, nothing else. And now an interesting move, black simply recaptures. So we have a really funny pawn structure now. It's equal material, but black, no, it's not equal material. Black has a pawn up, but he's got this funky triple pawn. Especially the pawn on f3 is really remarkable and really sets the course of the whole game. Let's see. Svidler played bishop e4. This is certainly the most logical move, putting this bishop on the long diagonal and intending to also just recapture the pawn. Bishop d7 now played, and here Svidler played a4 with what this is technically a novelty, at least according to my database. It's not a super comprehensive database, so there might be correspondence games missing or something like that. But it's not like this position has been explored in depth in Grandmaster practice. So a4. What about bishop f3? We should look at this. This is the most natural looking move. In fact, this has been played in a game between a player called Filev against black player called Vlashki. Don't know them. Both FM, IM strength. There black played long castles. Logical. Bishop f4 and knight e5. In general, if you look at this position, you see that white has regained this pawn, so it's equal material. But black has very active pieces, got those active pieces in the center, and black is very nicely developed. He's got no development problems whatsoever and is very active. I think that black does not have any sort of problem here. In fact, it's very, yeah, it's more like white is fighting for equality here, I believe. Simply because, let's say in this position, how do you keep your bishops? It's almost impossible to do so. If white now plays a move like bishop b2, looking very passive by the way, there's bishop g4 for example, and the whole position is somewhat shaky for white. It's simply not well coordinated, and the back rank is very weak. Something
Check.
like that, for example, now is necessary. But this is, yeah, not much fun. So Svidler's a4 is probably better. It's just more to the point and aggressive. Yeah, and black's reply is pretty clear. Needs to castle long. He needs to use his development advantage. He took on b5. And now black has a choice. He played knight e5, which I believe is the right move. And if you look at Topalov's time, only 9 minutes used, he probably had this at home. A takes b5 is the normal looking move. And this is, in comparison, I think it is less aggressive. Something like b4, bishop b6, knight d2 could be an interesting idea for white. The idea to push c4 is probably quite interesting. If black takes c4, this can get tricky. Note that black can never take. There is this
checkmate
direct punishment awaiting him. So something like that, in fact, looks quite good for white. I mean, black has made one or two not so precise moves in this sequence, but you get the idea. Black is not caring about that. He plays knight e5, just banking on his superior development. And the fact is, that white now cannot take on a6. This is not playable. Look at this. The back rank is simply the issue. White has all those pieces on the back rank, and the back rank is terribly weak. Here white can easily lose quickly. Something like that, for example. No, here the check first. And here black has something like that. And white is not going to survive the next couple of moves. This is just too much pressure. You cannot take because of rook d1 mate. And all black's pieces are fantastically placed. So even in short notice, white will lose material here. You cannot take on a6. Rook a6 is slightly better, but also after bishop c6, very risky business. It's always this weak back rank. Svidler played a better move. He played bishop f4, and this is just much more sensible. Get your pieces developed and also prepare a knight move so that finally the rooks are connected and the back rank is not so weak. Yeah, bishop f4, and now Topalov took on b5 with the bishop. This was the idea also of knight e5, this maneuver to get the bishop into play. And there's even this possibility where black's bishop is entering white's position with very active play. Yeah, and this is not much fun to play for white. I mean, Svidler was spending lots of time, and black's activity is really getting enormously annoying. And he has a pawn extra, black. I mean, it's a triple pawn, and black's pawn structure is looking like Swiss cheese, but it's still a pawn. So not a great result for Svidler, and very good for Topalov. Yeah, he played knight a3 here. The only alternative which makes some sense in my book is knight d2, but he probably didn't like that because of various things. One thing being bishop e2. Look at this. No, come on, bishop e2. Yeah, bishop e2. Yeah, rook e1 probably, not very active, and then probably just rook g8. And after something like, let's say this, and g3, white is just somewhat, it's passive. I mean, the knight is not doing much on d2, and especially the rook is not doing much. Yeah, black has various ways to try to improve. He can use the h-pawn if he wants. Just one way to go about it. And yeah, it's not great. I mean, knight a3 I think is fine. It's maybe not better than knight d2, but I understand the idea behind it. Knight d2 seems very passive. Yeah, and now Topalov took on d1. This is based on a concrete idea. It does not look too logical, to be honest, to capture, but he had a concrete calculation to back it up. In fact, I think it's probably better in this position to play bishop e2. Just like in the line before when the knight was on d2. I mean, I think in both lines it's black who is calling the shots. White here is also in trouble. He needs to take, really.
Check.
Something like that is immediately leading to big problems. Just for example, knight d3 is good, but there's also another funny line. If black goes here and you try to defend with this, black can even capture here.
Check. Check.
Yeah, and this is just, oops, not like that. You can take here, that's better. And you can even promote with a knight to a knight if you want. That's just one line to show that white is in real big danger. So we should look mostly at that to capture. And yeah, well, this position here is not much fun to play. Black is just better here. It's tricky though to find out what's the best possible continuation, and therefore I understand that Topalov went for his move. It also looks attractive what he's playing, but maybe this is even better. It's hard to tell. White here can get the pawn back if he wants. But this is just a a case where this knight is terribly dominated by black's bishops. It's just a very good position for black. Knight e2 was a very decent, bishop e2 was a very decent move.
Check.
Yeah, well, he took and played bishop e2 here. This is, of course, looking quite similar, but the difference is, of course, white can now go to d5, and this is certainly what Topalov had calculated, but it seems that he has missed something along the way. Here, up to now, he had played rather quickly. Yeah? He took a while and then played rook g8, and I believe that this is actually a really big mistake. If he is not doing that, playing a move like, let's say, bishop to d6, for example, then this position is probably around equal. I believe that rook d1 spoiled some of his advantage, but this is probably about equal. Black still has the pawn, but white now has active pieces. I mean, the rook is on d5 now, which is not too bad. The problem with his move is he played rook g8, and why is this a problem? Yeah, it's a tricky move, of course, because yeah, well, this is fun. You can look at this. White can take the piece, but here he's actually forced to accept the draw. Black is threatening rook f1 mate, and after h3 we get a draw.
Check.
White cannot try to win by escaping here.
Check.
Yeah, funny line. The end, black is winning with g5 coming. Yeah, Topalov's move rook g8, it looks good, it looks aggressive, but and it introduces this piece sacrifice. But yeah, Svidler does not need to take it. I mean, he certainly calculated this, but not by now. He can just play g3, simple move. And what exactly is black doing now? The problem is h7 is just hanging. You just have played rook g8, and this means that now the h-pawn is hanging. What should black do? Yeah, it seems to me that the best move is, I mean, you need to do something about your hanging bishop now, is to go bishop to b6, after which the capture. Not quite sure where the rook should go. Now let's say here, bishop to here, king moves. Yeah, and then we continue from here. Probably something like h4 now. Or the capture first, h4. Yeah, there's knight g6. This might be a bit annoying. Maybe even taking, and then h4. Yeah, this position is still very much playable for black. I mean, the computer likes white here, but black has some play. I mean, he's got the bishops, you know, and white's king is not 100% safe. I mean, this is what he should have done, I believe, but Topalov played a very hard to understand move. I really don't know what the calculation error was when he played it, because strategically speaking it looks terrible. He took on a3, giving up this this good bishop against the knight on the rim, and the strange thing is that after bishop a3, here Svidler, he thought for a moment, he didn't recapture immediately. Look at this, about 3 minutes, and here Svidler simply could have taken h7, and for some reason he must have discarded this idea, but it's simply winning the game, I believe. You can just take this pawn, and I really don't see what black is doing against it. And the problem is you always have bishop f5 check. If black plays this to attack the bishop, you can just give the check and then capture. So it's just the position of the game with the h-pawn gone. And I mean, the two bishops and the h-pawn, very simple plan. Black is just completely lost here. I really don't know. It would be interesting. As I didn't have the chance to watch the press conference after the game, it would be very interesting to learn what Svidler had calculated, or what both players had calculated. Bishop h7 just seems like a flat-out win to me. It just nets the pawn for no particular compensation, and with the bishop pair, it's too much. Yeah, well, Svidler recaptured. I don't know why. I don't know why really. It's not like he automatically recaptured. Sometimes it happens. Your opponent just takes your piece, and for some reason you don't consider intermediate moves and just recapture. But he spent 3 minutes and he was at the board. I saw that on video. He was really thinking. So he had some idea why he didn't take, but I don't know what it was. Okay, here Black managed to play knight g6 and save the pawn for the moment. However, the position is already more comfortable for White. This bishop a3 was simply a bad move. It's no other way to describe it. Yeah, it's a position where Black enjoys an extra pawn, but look at the pawns. Isolated, 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 triple pawn, and an isolated pawn. So this, I mean, Swiss cheese is more structured than Black's pawns. It's really difficult now in the long run to keep all your pawns and protect them all. It's very, very difficult against this active rook and the bishops. We see that in the next couple of moves. Rook e8.
Check.
This is check. And White is trying to improve, of course. The issue is the king. He wants to move the h-pawn and then get the king involved. The king is not playing, which is Black's only real asset here. Okay, g4. a5, h3, as mentioned, with the idea to activate the king. Black played h5. He wants to exchange pawns. This is very understandable. Bishop e4 check. And here I think is the decisive mistake really. King c8 is still very much defensible. I mean, White is more comfortable and easier to play, but the game continues. After king a6, the problem is after the capture and rook d8 that the king is in some trouble now. This is almost a checkmate. You only need to control b5 and it will be a mate. And the mating threats at the side of the board really get too much to handle. Now it's a real threat. Rook a8 checkmate. So c6 was played. Now rook b8. Yeah, this king is just a big liability. Knight c4 to cover b6, and now bishop to d4. And one by one the pawns get targeted. Target, target, target. They can all easily be attacked, and at the same time Black's king is in trouble. Yeah, c5 was played, and here the first one is going.
Check.
And here's the second one. They all fall piece by piece. It's now we come to the point where White actually has an extra pawn. The only drawing hope is, of course, opposite colored bishops. But there are still rooks on the board, which already is a difference. And White has 2 passers. So it's not like just one pawn. It's more like 2 pawns, as the double pawn is not so relevant here. Still, it's not completely trivial from a technical point of view. And we see that there are still things to solve, problems to solve. Bishop g5, rook c4. Yeah, in fact here I believe that Svidler made an inaccurate move. He probably should play king h2 and give up this pawn to get the h-pawn rolling. This is very important. The h-pawn's promotion square is a dark square, so this gives White excellent winning chances. I think probably White will win. He played instead, he played bishop d2, and it seems that here Black can retain some chances to fight, but somehow he didn't play it. I mean, he had 6 minutes on the clock, but Topalov didn't play rook h4, which I think still is offering some chances to fight. He played rook c7. Rook h4, it's quite interesting. If you look at this, attacks the pawn. White really needs the h-pawn. That's the winner pawn here. And now bishop f1. Yeah, attacking on h3. So rook takes f3 is the only move. And after this, black just plays like this. And continues with 2 pawns down. This is actually not at all easy to win, I believe. If you look at this, what should white do? Can try to use the c-pawn. The problem is, look at the king. It can never go anywhere. This is just
check,
giving it away. If you go here, still you lose the pawn. It's tricky. I mean, the c-pawn alone will probably not win, so white still needs to solve some problems. In the game, he played rook c7, and well, after that it's over. Now the h-pawn is running. Yeah, the h-pawn will decide the game. It's just a matter of simple technical play. Yeah, rook tries to go back, but even this wouldn't have helped. It's always this issue with
checkmate.
This mate. Yeah, the bishop is simply the right one for the h-pawn. Rook c8 was played. h7. Yeah, and here Topalov resigned. The only move to stop the pawn for now is this, and we've got
checkmate.
This cute mate again. So a very important game for the further course of the tournament. A good win by Svidler, who is back in contention, being on +1 again. Really an up and down tournament. He's certainly been the most exciting player to watch in the tournament. Yeah, and a very disappointing result for Topalov, who really displayed a great preparation in this game. I mean, look at this here, around here, he still was in his preparation and had a really great active position. But then with some moves like the capture, this sequence of moves really turned the good position into a difficult one. And bishop a3, after that he really had big trouble to play this position. In fact, bishop h7 here would have won the game, I guess, pretty convincingly for white. I'm not really sure why he didn't play it. It's always so easy after the game. You can sit there here in your office, have your coffee, switch on the engine, and it tells you bishop h7, white wins. It's not comparable to a situation in a real game where you only need to calculate. But I really don't. This is one of the cases where I have a hard time to understand, because it's nothing much complicated to calculate, really. Yeah, so what does this mean for the rest of the tournament? Svidler on +1, he's back in the race. Topalov with his losses on -1 after 5 rounds, and considering that you probably need +3 or +4, I don't really see him winning 4 or 5 games. He's the kind of player who is always able to win a game because of his enterprising style. But this game, it didn't. I don't know. It does not look like he's in terribly great shape. It seems. So yeah, tough one for Topalov, but an interesting game to watch, obviously. Yeah, I hope you liked the coverage for this game. Thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with round 6.